All right, it's 9 o'clock, so I think I'm going to get started. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning for the first MS4 Outreach and Q&A Session of 2022. We are going to be talking about Minimum Control Measure 6 today, so MCM 6, all about municipal operations, good housekeeping for municipal operations. My name is Carly Chaldal. I work at the MPCA in the Municipal Stormwater MS4 program. Just a little reminder, if you're not asking a question, I would like you to be on mute just to minimize that background noise. Before we jump into today's session, I just want to talk about the overall session goals. So we have been holding one of these sessions the third Thursday of every month, and we'll do so until 2022. The sessions start at 9 a.m. and run until 11 a.m. We are covering a section or an area of the permit for each session. So last month we talked about TMDLs. In November we talked about minimum control measure 5, so that post-construction piece of the permit. Today we're talking about MCM 6, and then next month in February we're talking about minimum control measure 4, and in March we will be talking about minimum control measure 3. And the whole goal behind these sessions is to help MS4 permittees kind of understand the requirements, give an opportunity to ask questions, and help update programs in the next 10 to 12 months, wherever you are at in that process. In this, we are looking for guest speakers or co-presenters. So if you feel there's something your municipality is doing that you want to share with the whole of the MS4 community, we welcome that, and we'd love to hear about things that you're doing. Also, please send questions in advance. It really helps us plan, and then we can make sure if there is a question that needs to be answered, we can answer that. So send any questions to the MS4 Permit Program box of this email listed on the screen here. We also were hearing from some people they weren't getting our emails. So if you're one of those people that hasn't been receiving our emails in regards to the webinars, also please email the MS4 Permit Program email box here listed on the slide, and we will make sure to add you to our list so you're getting notified of when our webinars are. So just a quick little agenda here today. Just went through the introduction piece. We'll be doing a Mentimeter survey here shortly. I will be covering MCM 6 requirements and guidance, and then we do have a couple speakers here from MPCA. Brooke Asselson will be covering the chloride resources and assistance. Bill Dunn will be talking about financial assistance. We will move into the Q&A, and then we will have a final Mentimeter survey, and we will wrap up. Are there any questions so far before I jump into the Mentimeter piece here? So Mentimeter is something that we have been using in the last few sessions. I did post the link in the chat, so just click on that and it'll bring you to this lovely screen here. So first few questions are just kind of to warm us up, get us ready for the day. This is anonymous. So the first question, what organization are you representing today? Again, I posted the link in the chat. So if you just click on that, then you are good to go. Good, it looks like people are finding it. All right, I'll give it a couple more seconds here. All right. Looks like we got majority cities, but otherwise we also got people from the other groups as well. So that's great. I'm going to move on to the second question here. How long have you been working with the MS4 permit? 0 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 8 years, or 9+ years? And it's great to see. It looks like people are finding the Mentimeter survey. Oh, goodness. Must be a lot of people. It's like dropped all the dots. Well, looks like we got a nice array of experience here. The next couple questions I'm going to be asking are specifically related to the MS4 permit. So do you have a snow and ice management policy? Again, these answers are anonymous. These were intended to be asked to help us as staff determine if we need to, provide any more guidance in these areas in the following questions. All right, so it looks like a majority of you already have one in place. So that's great. Next question, what topic do you cover in your training program? So you can choose all that apply. So if you cover all these, select all of them. If you only cover one or two, that's also fine. And then I'm just curious, the ones that are selecting other here, if you're comfortable, do you want to post that in the chat so others can see what else you're training about? All right, great. Well, it looks like we got training in all the areas. Continue to answer, but I'm going to move on to the next question here. The municipality I represent has not performed needed pond sediment excavation activities due to disposal costs and lack of disposal options. Again, responses are anonymous, and this is just helping us gauge where people are at on issues. All right, great. I think I'll get up at another second or two here. It's really great to see people are finding Mentimeter. I'm glad it's back up. The last session, we weren't able to use it. All right, thank you all for answering. I'm going to transition back here to my PowerPoint. And I'm going to jump into the MCM6 material now, unless there are any questions. Pause for a second in case someone posts something in the chat or wants to unmute. All right, not hearing anything, so I'm going to move on. So big meat and potatoes of today. So minimum control measure 6, municipal operations and good housekeeping for municipal operations can be found in section 21 of the 2020 MS4 permit. And the whole idea behind MCM6 is to develop and implement an operations and maintenance program that prevents or reduces the discharge of pollutants to the MS4 from permittee owned and operated facilities and operations. So what are the MS4 permit requirements for MCM6? So in general, you're required to have a facilities inventory and BMPs, salt storage, winter maintenance training, procedures and policies, total suspended solids and total phosphorus procedures, or TSS and TP procedures, inspections, maintenance, stormwater training program, documentation, and an annual assessment. And I will go through each one of these individually in the following slides, more in depth into what that entails for each permit requirement. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the facility inventory. You are required to maintain a written or mapped inventory of municipally owned and operated facilities and implement BMPs that prevent or reduce pollutants from all inventoried facilities. The bulleted list here is something that is also included within the MS4 permit. I'm not going to read through this list entirely. I'll just touch on a few that I have seen when I've conducted audits. So parks, pesticide storage, for example, parking lots, golf courses, public works yards, swimming pools, salt and snow storage, things like that. And again, this might not be a super extensive list. You might have something else in your municipality, and that is also fine. Just make sure you're inventorying it on your list. You are required to have B&Ps at municipal operations, so make sure you're implementing B&Ps that reduce or prevent pollutants in stormwater discharges where applicable. Again, this bulleted list is pulled from the 21.4 permit item. So any area where there's waste disposal and storage, including dumpsters, any management of temporary or permit stockpiles, maybe that's street sweeping or snow, vehicle fueling, washing and maintenance, routine street and parking lot sweeping, emergency response, cleaning of maintenance equipment, building exteriors or dumpsters, the use, storage, and disposal of significant materials, landscaping, road maintenance, right-of-way maintenance, and the application of herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers. And again, if you have any questions throughout my presentation today, please feel free to put those in the chat and we will answer those later. Salt storage. This is a new requirement in the 2020 MS4 permit. You are required to implement B&Ps at municipally owned and operated salt storage areas. So that means covering or storing salt indoors, storing it on an impervious surface, and then implementing practices to reduce exposure from transferring material of salt. So whether that be sweeping, diversions, or maybe a combination of containment as well. A snow, ice, and management policy. This is also a new requirement in the 2020 MS4 permit. So you need to make sure you're implementing a written snow and ice management policy for individuals who perform winter maintenance, and make sure you're establishing those practices and procedures for snow removal, plowing, the application of de-icing compounds, things like that. But from the Mentimeter survey, it looked like a good majority, at least on this call, are already implementing this kind of policy, which is great to see. Winter maintenance training is also another new requirement in the 2020 MS4 permit. And this requirement requires that all individuals who perform winter maintenance activities receive training. That includes the importance of protecting water quality, B&Ps to minimize the use of de-icers, so maybe that's proper calibration, the benefits of pre-treatment, pre-wetting, or anti-icing, and then tools and resources to assist in winter maintenance. So whether that be de-icing application rate guidelines, calibration charts, or the smart salting tool as well. So TSS and TP procedures, the total suspended solids and total phosphorus procedures. This is not a new requirement. This is something that was carried over from the 2013 permit. Make sure you're maintaining written procedures for determining TSS and TP treatment, effectiveness of ponds constructed for the use and collection of stormwater. Just a little side note here, when I'm conducting audits, I do find procedures in place, but make sure you are updating them to reflect, current years and future years of what your procedures will look like, just so it's actually inclusive of present day. Structural stormwater B&Ps are required to be inspected each calendar year. This does not include stormwater ponds. You can change the inspection frequency based on the following. So if you have complaints or you're performing more maintenance at a greater frequency, that is the reason to change your calendar year inspection. Or if you're finding your sump isn't collecting as much sediment after the first 2 calendar years of inspection, you may reduce your frequency to once every 2 calendar years if you determine that is the case. Pond and outfall inspections are required to be inspected once before the expiration date of the general permit. So in this case, you need to inspect all pond and outfalls at least once before November 15th, 2025, which is when the MS4 general permit expires. You're required to conduct any necessary maintenance as soon as possible. If maintenance cannot be conducted within 1 year of discovery, you need to make sure you're documenting a schedule and how that maintenance is going to be completed and when it will be completed. You're required to have a training program in place. So make sure implementing a stormwater management training program that outlines, individuals' responsibilities and how it relates to your stormwater pollution prevention program within your municipality. Make sure that includes reporting and assessment activities. You can also use materials from the EPA and MPCA. We actually do have training materials within the stormwater manual that we encourage you to use if you're unsure or you just want some ideas of what to put in your training program. You're more than welcome to use those, and I have some links to that at the end of this presentation. But again, you can use resources from any regional agency or any organization that you see fit that meets this requirement. Just make sure in doing that you're addressing the importance of protecting water quality. You're covering the requirements that are of the permit that are relevant to your staff's responsibilities. So maybe that's the illicit discharge, inspecting and eliminating those discharges, the post-construction MCM5 piece, or the MCM4 construction site runoff control piece, and then as well as the winter maintenance, which would be a new addition to your training program if you haven't already been doing that. With each training, you need to make sure you're including a schedule that establishes initial training for individuals, including any new or seasonal staff, and any reoccurring training intervals to address, any of those changes and procedures. Make sure you're also including the date too, but I guess I'll get to that in a second. So it's documentation piece, make sure you're documenting any information associated with the operation maintenance part of your program. So that means dates and descriptions of findings, including whether or not there was an illicit discharge detected, any adjustments to inspection frequency, dates and description of maintenance conducted as a result of inspection findings, and then a schedule for maintenance of structural stormwater BMPs and outfalls. And then again, stormwater management training events need to be documented. You need to include the general subject, the date, and then the names and the departments of individuals who attended. On excavation, you need to be documenting any removal activities. You need to be using a unique ID number and geographic coordinates for each stormwater pond from which sediment is removed. The volume in any unit you choose of sediment removed from each stormwater pond, results from any testing sediment from each removal activity, and then locations of final disposal of the sediment from each stormwater pond. Lastly, the annual assessment piece. You need to conduct an annual assessment of the operations and maintenance program. This includes the measurable requirements that are activities that need to be documented and tracked. So that's your inventory, your trainings, your inspections, your maintenance activities, those kinds of things that fall under the MCM6 requirements. It would be recommended that you do this before you complete the annual report, because it'd be a big help in helping you fill out the MCM6 annual report questions. As I mentioned, I do have some resources available. Well, we do, I don't specifically. The MPCA has resources available in the Minnesota Stormwater Manual. We have the MS4 Toolkit, which has training resources specifically for MCM6. We have the MS4 Digital Document Library, which has fact sheets, documentation templates, checklists, and example procedures. The one thing I would caution you, if you do use anything from the Digital Document Library, these were all documents that were approved under the 2013 permit, so they are largely going to still be relevant for 2020 MS4 permit requirements, but just make sure you're double checking them if you're going to be using them soon. MPCA staff is going to be reviewing these for compliance with the 2020 MS4 permit, but there are a lot of documents in there for us to review and get through, but we will be doing that soon. And then I believe Brooke will probably be touching on these, but there is the statewide chloride resources. So there's model snow and ice policies, example procedures, and contracts and educational resources. And then there's the smart salting training tool as well. So that kind of concludes my presentation. I think I'm a little ahead of schedule, so I don't know if Brooke, if you're on the line, if you want to go ahead and present. Otherwise, I can see what kind of questions are in the chat.
Yeah, I am here and I am ready to go whenever you guys are. I did see that there was a couple chloride related questions in the chat.
Okay.
One that I saw, Dwayne did reply that the MPCA does consider compacted gravel an impervious surface. That was one of the questions for salt storage. I will say in our training program, we do not recommend using gravel. It will break down the structure of that gravel pretty quickly. We also had a situation where, oh, and look at Carly's mug. Show everyone your smart salting mug. Look at that. Perfect. Yay. When we were doing in-person trainings, we were able to hand those out. So someday we'll get back to that. On the gravel, though, we've also had situations where we had a community storing their salt. It was covered and it was on a gravel surface, but over time that did infiltrate and get into a nearby farm field, which resulted in a significant area of the farmland that was no longer farmable because between the sodium and the chloride, it just created conditions that the farmer could no longer use that land, which resulted in a lawsuit. I'm not sure how that all turned out, but we do not recommend it. If you absolutely have to, I guess you're in compliance, but it still will require a little more maintenance because that salt is just going to over time start to kind of wear on that gravel. We also had a question about the smart salting program constitute a policy. So we, in the training, if you attend one of our smart salting training classes, we will talk about the importance of having a good snow and ice management policy, what to look for and having in there. But you have to actually have a written policy. So we can give you some guidance. And in my presentation, I'll actually share a model policy we have. But just attending a smart salting training class is not the same as having a written or a documented snow and ice management policy. There was also a question too, I will drop in here in the chat. We do have a smart salting email address. So if you have specific questions about a upcoming training classes or anything related to the smart salting program, we do have an email address that you can email for any questions. I don't know if you want to answer any of the other questions, Carly, or if you want me to go ahead with my presentation.
I think I'll let you take it away since we're kind of on the salt topic, and then we can get to questions later.
Okay, great. All right, well, let me just share my screen here. Go into presentation mode, and all right, I have a lot more slides here that I'm not going to be able to cover just because of the short amount of time. If we have a little extra time here today, I'm happy to go into any further detail on some of these items, but I did keep it pretty short with just 10 minutes. So a couple years ago, the agency created a chloride reduction program. So it's brand new. I do believe we are the only state to have a specific program dedicated to addressing this pollutant. So it's exciting to be developing this new program and to be working with all of you to figure out what resources and assistance and tools you need to reduce chloride and protect our water resources. So as Carly already introduced, I am Brooke Oslison. I am the chloride program coordinator. I've been working on chloride for over 14 years now at the agency. So I've spent a fair amount of my career thinking about this pollutant and working on it in different capacities. And so I'm excited to share some of that work with all of you today. So I first just wanted to highlight that we do have other sources of chloride that we're dealing with besides de-icers. I know the MS4 permit is going to be primarily focusing on those de-icing activities as a significant source. As you can see, it's about 42% of the total chloride making its way into Minnesota's waters. There is also a few other sources that are pretty significant. The blue is from wastewater treatment plants. A lot of that chloride, probably 70, maybe up to 90% of that, depending on the community, is going to be from water softening activities. So a lot of that is really coming from water softening. Same with that little gray 3% their residential septic systems. All of that is going to be the water softening salt that's passing through those residential septic systems. We also have a fair amount of potassium chloride or potash that is used in our state, from agriculture to, even just your lawns at home. And so that is a pretty significant source of chloride also making its way into our water resources. Dust suppressants is another fairly common source. Calcium chloride is kind of the go-to liquid to use for controlling dust. It's very effective. It is hygroscopic, so it actually draws moisture from the air, which makes it great at suppressing dust. However, that chloride eventually will make its way into our water resources, so it's not without its negative benefit or negative side effects. So the first kind of the piece or big piece and core of our chloride work is our statewide chloride management plan. If you have not checked this out, I encourage you to do so. We spent several years working with over 100 different stakeholder groups and partners to figure out how do we really address this pollutant. So we, of course, cover the scope of the problem, the most current water quality data and information, as well as the latest research on chloride. And then we have a fair amount of the plan that really dives into what can we do about it. And we have a lot of different audiences. We've got, of course, winter maintenance professionals. We have a lot of tips in there. Also, policymakers, the general public. I think we even have an idea in there for driver's ed trainers. So we have lots of different audiences that we're trying to find ways that we can all contribute to helping address this pollutant. So I encourage you to check that out. There's also a really great section of success stories. And so if you want to learn a little more about what other communities and organizations have done to change kind of the way they're doing things and have that benefit for the environment without compromising public safety, I encourage you to check out those success stories as well. As Carly mentioned, we do have a smart salting training program. Hopefully some of you have been through that. We offer, currently we have 4 classes. We're actually creating a couple new ones, so I'm very excited about that. The core of the training program has always been those classes that we offer for the hands-on winter maintenance professionals. And so that would be our parking lot and sidewalk class and our roads class. And so we will see a lot of crews, of course, will attend the roads class, but also there's some staff who will be responsible for doing the sidewalks and perhaps parking lots at city-owned buildings or county-owned buildings. And so, or maybe the Parks and Rec staff attend that parking lot and sidewalk class. And of course, private contractors, we see a lot of those attend that parking lot and sidewalk class. So those are our 2 classes for kind of the hands-on winter maintenance audience. We also have a smart salting for property management. This was a new class developed about 3 years ago. The idea was we had some private contractors who would come through the training. They'd go and implement a bunch of the practices and be very happy with the results, but their client or the property manager would just want to see salt, because of course there's this misperception out there that if you see a thick layer of granular salt out there that it must be safe, which is really not the case. But unfortunately, that's kind of a common misperception. Of course, they don't want to push too hard against their clients. They don't want to lose their business. And so one of our contractors had suggested that they had a client who actually attended one of the parking lot and sidewalk class. And after they went through that class, then they were so easy to work with. They were both on the same page. They were able to implement everything that they wanted to and work together on kind of providing that great level of service, but reducing their salt use. And so we had some funding available, so we decided to create a shorter kind of condensed version of the class that doesn't get into the details. So the property management class is not going to show you how to calibrate your equipment. It's not going to talk about how to use liquid de-icers or some of the other more technical content we cover in those other 2 classes, but it will talk about the environmental, problems that are created by using excessive salt, as well as the damage to infrastructure, those liability concerns, and some ideas from kind of a management of the property like closing certain entrances and things that they do have control over that can help them. So that's a really great class. It's also a fantastic class for those who are responsible for the MS4 permit. So they might not do winter maintenance, but they might have to work with the staff. And so it's a really great way to help kind of get them all the information. And we do go into quite a bit of detail now in the roads and the property management class about all of the new MS4 permit requirements related to chloride. So if you're wanting to dig in really deep on those new permit requirements, we do cover them in detail in the roads and the property management class. We also have a level 2 certification. This is a little bit different from our other classes in that this is intended to represent your organization. So like one representative, say from your city, would be responsible for using the online tool and submitting all the required reports to get your overall organization level 2 certified. We do offer a class to help kind of walk you through how to utilize the tool. You don't need to attend class in order to use the tool. It's a free online tool that you can, create an account today and go ahead and start using. We've kind of come up with a schedule where every December and July, we're going to offer a level 2 class. So those are the time frames. If you're ever interested, you can just email us and then we will be sure to notify you when we get one of those on the books. The other 2 classes I'm very excited to announce. We have a Green Corps member right now who is working for the MPCA, our We Are Water program. And I got a little bit of her time, and she's creating a smart salting for local leaders. So this will be a short 1.5 to 2 hour workshop where we will be inviting, city council members, board members from watershed districts or other organization board members from housing associations to take just a little bit of their time to hopefully educate them and get them more aware of what they can do to hopefully help support the rest of you. So we're going to be offering some pilot classes over the next couple months. So if you go to our training calendar, which I've got the link right there in my slide, you will see those classes start popping up on our training calendar. So we're very excited to have a Green Corps member working with us to create that new content and then to do a couple pilots over the next few months. And then we will plan to incorporate that into our overall training program. We're also creating a new training for plumbers and water softening professionals. It'll be smart salting for hardness. So we're going to be looking at ways to kind of create some awareness and education within the water softening industry on ways that we can make adjustment changes, improvements to that process to reduce chloride. So pretty exciting to be able to offer some of these new classes to reach new audiences. And why I think training is important. I think training is important because just in general, it's going to improve operator effectiveness. When everybody has greater knowledge of all of the different tools, how they work, the best way to use them, that just is going to make your organization more effective. And that is something that we have seen and heard from communities who participated in the training program. It will save money. Almost all of the communities who have shared their changes, their BMP changes with me, have shown a savings, even when they had to purchase equipment. So we've had some who actually had to purchase brine making equipment or brine application. And within a year or two, they have already started to see a cost savings. And so I have yet to hear of anyone implementing the practices for this particular pollutant and actually having to spend money. It actually does help save your organization money. And if you think about, besides just the salt purchases, you think about the reduced damage, because we all know how corrosive salt or deicers can be. And so all of that damage can get reduced and can kind of reduce your costs that you have to have every year to go out and repair, replace those lawns, repair those shrubs. The concrete maybe needs to get replaced every couple of years. So it definitely has an improvement on just reducing the damage to the infrastructure as well. It can also really be helpful if you're trained to improve the safety conditions. So there's certain deicers where if they're not used under the proper conditions, say the proper temperature, they can actually create more of a problem and make it unsafe. So being trained properly on how to use all of these tools is really important. And I don't know that we would ever In a lot of other fields, we would go out and provide these services without really being trained and understanding how they work. So I think just understanding how everything works is really important. And of course, then you are going to be more educated and knowledgeable on how we are protecting our water resources, and can feel great about that every day you get to go out and have a role in protecting our water resources. Here's a great example that we like to highlight, the Mayo Clinic had their staff as well as their contractor participate in the training program back in 2018 and 19. And I don't know, those of you who do winter maintenance, you probably do remember that year because it was kind of our polar vortex. And Rochester in particular got hit with a ton of pretty nasty snowstorms that year and some pretty icy conditions. And even in those pretty drastic winter conditions, they were able to reduce their salt use by 60%. And I can guarantee you that Mayo Clinic is not going to make their surfaces any less safe. They have a lot of visitors coming to their facility who may not have any experience with snow and ice, or who might have different disabilities. So, having those safe conditions is really important for, of course, our hospital clinics, as well as it is everywhere. And they really didn't make any major drastic changes. They started calibrating their equipment. They got everyone trained. They started using liquids properly. They had attempted it in the past, but did not do it correctly, and it didn't work, of course. And then they created, unsafe conditions, and they just stopped doing it. And once they had more training and education around how to use those liquids properly, they had much greater success, and then they continue to this day to use liquids. And one of the things that Nick always says is they really just changed their mindset. Instead of plow and salt being one word, they just separated it. They're going to plow, and then they will evaluate what is the next best tool to use if plowing isn't going to get the job done. They did say they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. I couldn't get a specific dollar amount out of them, but they did also attest to that point I was making earlier, that implementing these practices can really save your organization money as well. We do have a training video that we have interviewed several participants, so you don't have to take my word for it. You can watch our short little YouTube video here on the MPCA's YouTube site and hear from those folks themselves on why they attended the training and why they think it's important. We have a de-icer or a salt playlist right on the MPCA's YouTube, and maybe I'll drop a link to that for all of you later. We also have a smart salting tool. So this is that online tool I mentioned earlier that can help your organization get that level 2 certification. And this was created by winter maintenance professionals. The process of developing this was really sitting down with the hands-on winter maintenance experts, as well as some of those experts who make some of the de-icer products and some of the other tools, the manufacturers of these, to really pick their brains on what opportunities exist to make changes that will not compromise safety, but will result in a reduction in salt use. And so we walk you through. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to know if what you're doing is, using excessive salt or not. You just have to answer a series of questions of how often do you calibrate your equipment. And then you will get a series of reports that will help you to find those opportunities where you can make some changes. And also it can be used to really track your implementation over time. So if you want a good way to track what you've actually been implemented and document that, and perhaps use that in some of your MS4 reporting, you can go ahead and use that tool and have that be a supplemental report to show the progress that you are making. We also are in the process of adding, this is very exciting, fertilizer and water softening to this. So we are turning this into a more holistic chloride tool. So we will be addressing some of those other sources as well in the near future. Here is an example. We had Edina Public Schools has used the tool and attended the training. And after that, they, of course, implemented these practices. You can see in this chart, we've got 3 different time periods. It's up to you which ones you want to pick. So there's the past, the current, and the future. And as you can see, the red bars were very high in the past. Red, of course, are the poor practices. The yellow are considered the best or acceptable practices, and green are the advanced. So the green is we're really working hard, we're being progressive, we're doing everything possible to reduce our salt use. So this is exactly the trend we'd like to see, and this is a great way to visually show the progress that your organization is making, that those reds are going down and the greens are going up. And this is just one way that you can view your results. There's a lot of different reporting options. And so you can pick what types of report you want to print out that might help your organization best. Perhaps you do a printout and you get the one that just shows all the red practices, and that can be your checklist. Over the next couple years, you're going to work on changing those red practices. And maybe you want to use this to plan out. We'd really like to purchase some new equipment, and you can use this to kind of help with that planning and maybe bring this to your city council or other decision makers to help support your needs for upgrading your equipment and having all the tools you need to do your job as effectively and efficiently as possible. So as you can see, here is another one where they made some significant reductions in their salt use and, of course, have not compromised the safety of their school grounds. Another new feature for the Smart Salting tool, we are adding a GIS component where you will be able to select your community, your watershed, and it will help you to identify all the sources of chloride in your area. So I'm really excited about that. We just have our contract underway to actually build this. We did some work the last 2 years to look into how this would work, what available data there is, and now we're actually in the building phase. So I'm very excited to be offering this more comprehensive tool that will allow you to evaluate all the sources of chloride in your community and then provide you with some guidance or some recommendations of things that you can consider implementing in your community. Now on to some of the other resources that we have available. We do have some grants. We've had 2 grants so far, chloride reduction grants. They have been focused on water softening per the legislative language. I called it the Chloride Reduction Grant Program because I am hoping in the future we will have a little more flexibility with those funds to use them for all different types of chloride reduction activities. But the last 2 kind of pots of funding that we received were very specific that they had to be for water softening. But of course, maybe some of you have water softening as a source. And so stay tuned for that. And one great way to stay up to date on all the resources, the grants, the training program that we have available is to subscribe to our Smart Salting newsletter. So in that newsletter, of course, I posted the proposal for that grant opening. Whenever we have any new relevant information coming out, that will always get posted in that newsletter. So I encourage you to subscribe to that to stay up to date on all things smart salting. I did mention we have a couple of other great programs that I will cover a little bit here. I can't cover all of them, but I can at least highlight some of the ones that I think might be most pertinent to you all. We do have a model ordinance that we created, a chloride reduction model ordinance. So the number 2, there's 4 different pieces of it. Number 2 is one option that you may choose to implement that MS4 permit requirement that does require you to have some type of regulatory mechanism in place to have everyone in your community storing their salt properly. So we do have that included in this overall chloride reduction model ordinance that you are welcome to utilize. And in there, we also expanded it to include some other areas where one would be anyone who is requiring a business or asking for a business license to do snow and ice management in your community. Maybe should also be required to be training, similar to our certified arborists. A lot of the tree and landscaping companies have to show that they have certified arborists or they have that fertilizer certification in order to do work. So it would be similar to that. The number 3, we actually took right from 9 Mile Creek Watershed District and Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District, who has this in their watershed plans, that any new development or redevelopment project has to have a point person who has been through the training program, as well as a local chloride management plan, which the Bassett Creek Watershed District and several partners who are working together in Hennepin County just actually created a site-specific tool to help develop that chloride management plan. So that's very excited. And a lot of these ideas can also be implemented as policies. So for instance, the city of Minneapolis, Metro Transit, and several other cities that I've talked to actually require anyone who they're going to hire for snow and ice removal that they aren't going to do themselves. They do require them to actually be certified and trained in order to even bid on the work. So that's another idea to implement some of these more as policies rather than ordinances. We also have some loan programs. The Clean Water Partnership is going to be for government entities, And then the small business, of course, is going to be for businesses with 100 employees or less. And both of those are 0% interest right now. You can apply anytime, and equipment upgrading is eligible under these. The Clean Water Partnership, you can also, in addition to purchasing new equipment, you can use those loan funds to do an educational campaign, to replace water softeners, or to develop ordinances. So I encourage you to check that out. If you have any idea, I would talk through with Cindy Penny, who is the manager for that program, to talk through your ideas, because I'm guessing they might be eligible. So please take advantage of these 0% interest loans. We also have a Green Corps program. This is an AmeriCorps program where we have environmentally focused interns that we place every year. We're up to 50 now a year that we place in communities across our state. And we have highlighted chloride reduction as part of that work. So every year now I get a group of probably 6 to 8 Green Corps members who are spending a fair amount of their time working on different chloride reduction components. The city of Minneapolis has had a Green Corps member the last 2 years, and they have created a online mini course for the residents to help kind of them walk through and learn about the importance of that, and they're incorporating that into their stormwater requirements in the future here. So there's a lot of great things that a Green Corps member can do to just give your community that extra time and kind of kicks, a little bit of a jump start on working on chloride. So the application for host sites typically opens in February. So it would be a great time to start checking that website out if you think you might be interested. I really strongly encourage it. It's done, these Green Corps members do some really great work, and they've really made a big difference in the communities. And the Green Corps member is free to you. The MPCA pays. You just have to provide a good working environment, some place for them to, of course, work, an email address, a supervisor, all of that good stuff. But as far as their payment goes, the MPCA covers that through our Green Corps program. We do have a model snow and ice policy posted on our website. This was developed by Smith Partners several years ago with Freshwater, partnered with several watershed districts and cities to create this. So I know in the poll, many of you said you did have a snow and ice management policy. I would encourage you to check this one out, compare it to what you've got, and maybe there's some pieces in here that might work for you. So the goal of this was to not only bring in that environmental consideration into the decisions you have to make on a daily basis when managing snow and ice, but also to give you that professional judgment flexibility that we all know you need when you're dealing with these variable weather events. And so it's really important to have a good snow and ice management policy that is communicated and that you're following. So if you don't have one, please check this out. If you do, I encourage you to still check it out and just kind of compare it to what you're using today. Chloride is also worked into the Green Step Cities program. So if you are a Green Step city or you're interested in going that route, I encourage you to check out what chloride things you could do to help you earn that Green Step Cities award. We also have a ton of educational resources that is all listed on that website, the statewide chloride resources website. But we also have a display that was at the state fair several years ago that we do loan out. So if you have any interest in having a display up in your city hall for a couple months, let me know, and we'll work with you. It is on loan right now. I'd have to look at the list to see where it is and where it's going next, but I like to just keep it out there instead of sitting in our storage shed. So please consider that as a possible way to educate those in your community. And my one last educational idea here is Isaac Walton League has a fantastic salt watch program. That's a couple watershed districts actually have partnered up with them. So you could either utilize their existing program or you could partner with them to kind of modify it and make it more custom to your community to really engage your residents in getting out there and checking kind of what the chloride levels are in your local lakes and streams. So here's what their chloride website looks like. We've got a lot of great resources there. That bottom right is the statewide resources where all of our grants and loans and Green Corps member information, as well as a wealth of educational resources that our partners have created and given us permission to share with everybody. So that concludes mine, and I think we got to move on now because I probably used up all that extra time we had, didn't I?
That's okay.
That's okay.
Thanks, Breck.
Thanks, Breck.
Bill, done. If you're on the call. I guess we can transition to your part of the
Sure thing. Are there questions, or we can take a breather here, but I'm ready to go.
I think we'll do yours and then we'll just transition to questions.
Well, hi gang, thanks. I was here last month, and here, let me get my presentation up. And so I'm back again. And last month was the Follow the Money Serum. And that's where we talked about how I'm having a difficult time advancing here. I even practiced. I don't know, this doesn't seem to be working. Okay, hang on, gang. Brooke made it look so easy. There we go.
It was a setup, Bill. I was just setting you up.
All right, well, I appreciate it. So back on track, and I thought that for a while now it might be good to do something each month on Follow the Money, because we all know that it takes money to make change. And last month I went into how great our low interest loans are and how the grant is available for MS4s that are addressing waste load allocation, 80% grant up to 7 million. That's all good stuff. We're in the process of distributing our mailing. You could see there that we're addressing the stormwater officials. You'll all be receiving a copy of this. It'll be up on PFA's website, and what it really does is it sets up our annual predictable boring cycle every year, March, June, July, and September. So I really encourage you to contact me if you have any questions about whether your city has some opportunities to address in that base program. It really is there to help you achieve your goals, and it's widely used for wastewater as well as drinking water infrastructure. So I guess all I can say is the last time I got one call, and I appreciated the call. It was from Bowser, making sure we're coordinating our different programs. And they do have stormwater money as well. This week, big announcement, the governor put out his capital bonding bill. And so that's good news for stormwater, everybody. And if this works, I should be able to click on, I don't think I have the right, let's see. 1 second here, gang. In my business, I always have a backup plan. So anyways, on the link that will be included in this meeting is the MMB's site, and you can see all the different agencies, and we have some of our favorite agencies here. The Pollution Control Agency had submitted, my screen's a little small here, a budget request to create a new stormwater program. And they asked for 50 million. The governor is recommending 20 million and the necessary general fund money to stand up the program. So this is fantastic news. You could see here that it's the agency's #1 bonding request. So that's pretty exciting. The agency has other requests, but we'll go to our other favorite agency, the Public Facilities Authority. They're the ones that provide the low interest loans and grants. They were able to achieve their request to the governor, 49 million to provide the matching funds for the federal funds, both base and those new supplemental appropriations that'll be coming over the next 5 years. This will be the first 2-year installment. Next is our water infrastructure funding program that achieves affordability for both drinking water and wastewater. That has a historic $76 million request. and the PSEG program, that is that 80% grant. Last year requested 75, didn't quite get the full 75, but this year it's good news that they're asking for, and the governor has recommended it. So that's all good news on the capital front. Lastly, like I mentioned, I thought it would be good to keep coming back to these financial assistance topics. Brooke talked about the PCA's Clean Water Partnership Program. I want to get Cindy Osborne in here so she can give you a little bit deeper dive as well, because there's other stormwater other than chloride for loans. Department of Ag BMP program, Richard Gurnis could provide you your opportunities through that low interest loan program. Bowser Grant Program, let's take a deeper dive. What are they looking for? How do they coordinate? We got the wonderful Clean Watersheds Needs Survey coming up. That is running. There are the dates. And more so, send me ideas. I would be very open to other topics that might be good to cycle through. And with that, that is all I have. So I would stand for questions, or I would turn it back to Carly.
Thanks, Bill. It looks like there's a question here from Jane. Will there be more funding available to address quality or quantity flooding climate issues? So much of the funding is tied to water quality and TMDLs, which is not our primary concern.
Absolutely, and that is the whole point of the new MPCA stormwater request, is to fill the void that doesn't exist there now. If you do want to add treatment, there are avenues to go there, but strictly the climate improvements, that's exactly what it's aiming to do. We really need to work as a team to make sure that the legislators hear this is a need. This will make a difference. We intend to set up a program that isn't onerous and is predictable. So all we can do is to work toward that. So great question, and spread the word. And
I'm not
other than that,
seeing any other questions related to financial assistance right now, at least. I think it looks like Cole has responded to a couple questions in the chat regarding pond sediment and pond maintenance. I think there's a couple in here. Probably there will be more geared towards Brooke to answer. So Brooke, there's a question in the chat from Randy Neeprash. Is the MPCA and or the DNR monitoring increasing salt concentrations in groundwater, especially in the Twin Cities metro? Is this an issue of concern? Is there a relationship to infiltrating stormwater from high traffic volume roads?
Yes, great question, Randy. Yes, we are continuing between MPCA, Department of Ag, and other partners. We do have continuous groundwater monitoring happening, and chloride is included in many of those sites. So we have monitoring of the shallow groundwater as well as some of our deeper aquifers. So that is ongoing, and it is an issue, particularly where the shallow aquifers are connecting to a lot of our local streams and lakes. We're seeing year-round chloride or elevated chloride year-round because of that connection and that lag time, and depending on the local geology and the soils. You know, we could be seeing chloride that was applied maybe 5 years ago that's still kind of slowly making its way through the subsurface into our surface waters. So there's, of course, that very important interaction. And then your comment about infiltration, there was actually a great work group brought together that just did that Mike Trojan was leading, that looked at a white paper of those impacts. We do have that paper on our statewide resources page. So the first kind of section of that is going to be reports and studies done on chloride that are kind of notable and interesting. So I encourage you to check out that white paper that was developed, because of course, if we're directing that runoff from our storm sewer systems into groundwater, or if there's other ways that's getting into our groundwater, it is affecting not only those surface waters, but eventually connecting to our deeper aquifers as well. And while getting salt in your drinking water is not, there's no human health standard for chloride. There is a secondary standard, which is 250 milligrams per liter, so very close to our surface water standard, where the water will start to taste salty. I don't know of any deep aquifers in Minnesota that is near that. But I do know that in Madison, Wisconsin, they do have residents complaining of salty tasting drinking water. And so they are right now in the process of working very hard to reduce chloride at the source, and also looking at options for how they might have to drill a new well for their community, since they do have contamination of chloride making its way into their drinking water source. So I don't think that's an issue yet here in Minnesota, but we want to avoid that from happening. And that's where preventing it from making it even onto our streets or our roads are the best. This is the best way to go. I also see Randy wants a mug. We're not doing any in-person classes right now, Randy. We actually have just been virtual through the whole pandemic here, and we're probably going to stick virtually until we're in the clear. But we are not mailing the mugs out. It's just a little expensive, but that's something that we will once we get back, because I know we're all going to get back to some in-person stuff. One of these days we will all kind of be back to in person again, and I will start carting around those big boxes of mugs to the training classes to hand out. So I look forward to that day. In the meantime, maybe if there's some other meeting, I can get you a mug, but you got to be certified. You got to go through training. Carly, she put in the time, she's certified. I, of course, have my little mug here. Mine is filled with candy, but it seems like my children have discovered my secret little candy stash here, because it's almost empty.
Smart kids. Brooke, it looks like there's another question in here for you from Greg Kimman. With fertilizer accounting for 23% of the chloride source, are there any efforts the MPCA is pursuing to reduce the impact from the source as well?
Yep, so our first step was looking to include that into our smart salting tool. So kind of that development phase that was just going on the last 2 years, we actually brought together a technical expert committee of, we had some farmers on there, we had some city staff, we had some producers who make the fertilizer, and several U of M extensions on there. And honestly, they haven't thought about chloride. So our first step is to kind of break through that new audience, that new kind of sector, and get them more aware of the fact that chloride in fertilizer is a problem. And so already through that effort, as well as we added chloride or fertilizer to the SALT Symposium. So every year Fortin Consulting hosts a SALT Symposium, and the last 2 years we have expanded that to a 2-day, it's all online, and we have included fertilizer and industrial sources and water softening, and as well as our regular winter maintenance topics that are covered at that conference or symposium. So we've definitely got their attention. And they've already made some new recommendations in changing fertilizer application rates, and then we're looking at the alternatives to get potassium without that chloride attached to it, and to see if there might be negative environmental impacts if we were to switch. And so right now we're in a very exploratory phase. We're just kind of highlighting that this is an issue, working with the experts in the industry to help get their knowledge and figure out what we might be able to implement. So we do have some high-level kind of recommendations right now for basically proper fertilizer management will help with reducing that, and we'll be including that in the smart salting tool in the next year and a half here.
Thanks, Brooke. Looks like there's a question in here from Emily Jennings. Any advice on how to handle requirements such as winter maintenance training requirements, documentation of de-icer applied, etc. for MS4 communities who contract all winter maintenance activities, no public work staff, no snow removal equipment, etc. So this is kind of asking about the documentation piece in MCM 6. I guess what I would ask is whoever you're contracting with, if they are certified, to provide you that documentation, or maybe send them some sort of training piece and ask them to sign it. And then I would think they would be able to tell you how much de-icer they're using within your community when they are out there. I guess if Cole or Dwayne have any other input, or any other city or community that contracts things out, how they are going to work that, or how they do work with this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and Brooke, I don't know if you offhand know, but I thought some communities, or maybe it's a watershed district, they actually require their contractors that are gonna be applying salt to be smart salting certified. And I don't know if that's available or not as a model contract or something, but I think that's one way you can sort of get at this piece about, making sure that they're certified. We do have those lists available, I believe, on the Smart Salting website, like who has gone through the training and who is Smart Salting certified. So that's one way to kind of keep track if they have been trained or not. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Brooke.
Yeah, I will say if they do go through our training, they will receive a certificate. So that could be proof of that they're trained and certified, as well as they will show up on our list that's posted on the MPCA's website for who is certified. And that's a 5-year certification for the hands-on winter maintenance professionals. So it's just once every 5 years. We do have a model contract. Actually, the city of Edina pulled together a group of committee members and hired Smith Partners again to develop a model contract that can be useful for working with winter maintenance professionals to ensure that that environmental piece is being considered. So that is an option as well. We have that on our website. And I think just that documenting the amount of de-icer, it could simply just be a spreadsheet on a clipboard, and they just write down, okay, when I went out on this date, this is how much salt I use. They will know that because they're paying for that salt. So I think I would recommend that something more than just here's how much we purchased versus here's what's left is going to be better, because you're going to know exactly what they're using. That'll be more helpful for you if you're trying to reduce chloride, is to actually know how much are they putting down per lane mile. And that can be a simple, just little piece of paper that they write it down on, a more complicated spreadsheet. And there are some online, software that they can actually use that can help track the amount of salt that's coming out of their truck. So there's a lot of different options there, from pretty simple to a little more complex. And yes, Cole, you are right. There are several cities who require that. They require that in their RFP process. So when they put out their RFP, the request for proposals for those services, similar to the state of Minnesota, we do the same thing. You can't even apply to bid on the work unless you are trained and certified. So that is, several cities have gone that route, as well as Met Council, Metro Transit, and the state of Minnesota has been doing that for a while now too.
Yeah, thanks, Brooke. And I think I might have found maybe the example that you were talking about as far as like the city of Edina, and I'll try and post that in the chat.
Thanks, Cole. Thanks, Brooke. I think, Brooke, this next question is geared towards you too. I see information on the MPCA website that pavement temperature is what is needed to determine how to apply de-icing materials. What is the general correlation between air temperature and pavement temperature?
That is another great question. So there is no correlation between air temperature and pavement temperature. There are just too many factors that will influence the pavement temperature that you cannot make a correlation between air temperature and pavement temperature. And so that is one of the core things in the training that we cover and talk about, is that if you don't actually know the temperature of your pavement, that you are really not informed enough to be out managing that snow and ice. So all of those who do winter maintenance will know that, of course, the bridge decks, right, that pavement is going to be much colder because you've got that cold air coming underneath the bridge as well as on top of it. If it's shaded, if it's asphalt, if it's concrete. So there's a lot of different things that affect that pavement temperature. Is the sun out? Is it cloudy? And there is some tools that are available. So there is a system, a weather forecasting system, and I am working right now with the Department of Admin to see if we actually can't get a state contract in place. And so that we would request the bids from the companies like DTN who offer these weather forecasting services, which includes pavement temperature. It'll give you what it is now, but it actually will forecast out hour by hour into the storm. So that is one of the top tools. If you had to ask me, like, what are the top 3 tools that we can implement to help us reduce our salt use, be more informed on our winter maintenance activities, getting some type of weather forecasting service, it would definitely make it the top of my list. So I'm hoping that by getting on a state contract, kind of we could maybe take out some of the work and bring that cost down, and then open it up to all of you, of course, so that you can just use that. The counties do have a contract with, I think it's DTN, and they have like this, you can all be on one, and then like brings the cost down. I can find that contact if you're a county and you're interested, but that is something that we are looking at because that pavement temperature is so important. And we just had a class yesterday, and we had the city of St. Paul's supervisor is a co-instructor, and he was showing an actual live screen, and it was about a 20-degree difference between the air temperature and the pavement temperature. And if it's warmer or colder, it's going to change on the time of the year as well. So there are little handheld temperature sensors that you can buy, like just at your hardware store, where you just, it's like a little gun and you just shoot it on the surface. You could use it at home too if you want to measure the temperature of your walls, or, you know, I'm not sure what else it might measure the temperature of. So that would be kind of an easy way. Otherwise, a lot of organizations have truck mounted sensors. So that's going to be the most accurate. You don't have to get out of your truck, and you can actually see what the temperature is. Or there's those forecasting services where they use pucks that are actually embedded in the roads across our state. Many of them are owned by MnDOT. So there are a small handful of them that you can actually find on their 411 website, but these companies actually have their own kind of all over the place as well. And so there are these pavement sensors, little pucks that are in the concrete, and they kind of pull the data from that as well. So I really highly recommend you look into an actual weather forecasting service, or get actual pavement sensors mounted on those trucks, because using just like a weather app is just really not going to be accurate enough. And if the temperature of your pavement is colder than 15 degrees, sodium chloride is not going to work for you. And so you really want to know, okay, I need to switch products, because then you're just wasting that salt as well as your money. So I think pavement temperature is a really important thing to know and have handy when you're out there doing winter maintenance. And then it looks like we've got another one, temperature sensors with capabilities for real-time data across. So yes, so there are several like little mini weather stations that these companies who do this forecasting have in place across the state. And some of them, like I said, are owned by MnDOT, so you can gain access to them. And I mean, they will give you the humidity. They will predict hour by hour how the temperature is going to change, how the humidity is going to change, how that pavement temperature is going to change. And so for the organizations who I've worked with who have switched to this, have found just huge benefits. And they use it year round, because they're also using it for flooding and for traffic management. And so there's a lot of other road applications that they can be useful for. So if you are interested in learning more about the weather forecasting, I'd be happy to answer questions, but I'm of course not an expert at it, but I can maybe connect you with some winter maintenance professionals that I know who I do know have experience with it, and can get you more information.
Thank you, Brooke. All right, it looks like Cole posted the model winter maintenance contract in case you're interested in checking that out. And then Bill Dunn just posted some links from his presentation about the governor's 2022 proposed capital budget, if you want to take a look at any of those links. I guess we can hang out here for a little bit. If there are any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself now or post them in the chat. Otherwise, we will probably end here in 5 minutes. Or actually, just kidding. Before we leave, I'm supposed to be doing another Mentimeter survey, but I know a lot of people have already dropped off the call. So if you're still on, would appreciate your feedback from today's session. Otherwise, I understand if you got to run to another meeting. But if you have time, what guidance or materials would you suggest be developed by the MPCA related to today's topic? Oh, it looks like we also got another question here as well. Can you provide an overview of what constitutes a snow storage area for our inventory? Are cul-de-sac piles and boulevards intended to be included? I would say that any area where you're storing snow should be included on your inventory. Cole, I don't know if you want to clarify that further as the permit writer.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to maybe exercise your kind of your best professional judgment as far as what do you consider. If it's a larger pile, yes, I would include it. If it's a regular snow pile that you're every year, you have you're performing winter maintenance and it's going to be there every year and it's relatively large, I would include it. It does not, we had some questions during the development of the permit if it includes like, along every road there's a snowbank that piles up, just as a kind of a byproduct of plowing. We don't intend those to be necessarily included, but if you have larger piles, we're hoping that you do include that in your facilities inventory. So you got some discretion to work with, but larger snow piles in general should be included in your inventory.
Thanks, Cole. Thank you for everybody that's answering the Mentimeter survey as we wrap up here today. Cole, I don't know if you wanted to comment any further on Amy's question, but she says Plymouth has more than 920 cul-de-sacs among its 325 miles of streets. And then Jim also commented, I don't know if that was in response to Amy's comment, but on that question, I would suggest a delineation based on whether the snow is hauled.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question from Jim and Amy. And you do have a level of discretion as far as maintaining this inventory. We want you to include those primary sources where you think that there's pollutants from stormwater discharges. So if you have these large piles melting, and you think, hey, you know what, it's large enough that there's garbage and a lot of salt associated with it from all plowing with salt application. But if it's overwhelming, which it sounds like maybe in the city of Plymouth's case it is, you might want to establish a threshold for, okay, we're going to inventory snow piles that are x number of cubic yards or something of storage. And I think a lot of communities deal with this. I know MnDOT, I think, probably does a lot of plowing. So if you want to establish a threshold, we're not going to just include plowed areas that large accumulations. We're going to actually only where we actually haul snow to. I think we'd find that acceptable.
Thanks for the clarification, Cole. We have kind of a comment, I guess, / question. Curious in the future to hear more about research of products that might serve as chloride substitutes. There must be a fair amount of research out there. Guessing MPCA has awareness of this or even involved. Thanks for the information today. All right. I think we'll just hang out here. If you have any more questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat. Otherwise, I will end this at 10:22.